The air in the Glimmerdust Palace was thick with the scent of honeyed mead and arrogance, a combination that always made Elena's stomach twist. She moved like a ghost through the bustling kitchens, her wings, once a vibrant, shimmering gold, now dull and clamped tightly against her back, a constant reminder of her captivity. She was a moss-blossom fairy, a species the sun-wing fairies of this kingdom considered little more than vermin. Slave. For 3 days, the sharp pang of hunger had been her constant companion. Her hands trembled as she polished a silver platter, the reflection showing a face too thin, with large, haunted violet eyes that seemed too big for her delicate features. A memory surfaced, unbidden. Her mother's voice, soft and melodic, singing a lullaby as she braided Elena's hair. It was a song of mossy glens and shimmering streams, a song of home. The notes, a fragile shield against the despair, began to hum in her throat, so quiet she barely heard them herself. "Hush, little blossom, don't you cry, the moon will watch you from on high." Ooh. Moss blossom. The sharp voice of Mistress Cora, the head of the royal household, cut through the memory like a whip. Elena flinched, nearly dropping the platter. "Stop that infernal noise," Cora snapped, her own iridescent wings fluttering in irritation. "The Council of Elders is convening. They require service at the high table. Be quick and be silent. One wrong move and it's the lash for you." Elena nodded mutely, setting the platter down and picking up a heavy crystal decanter of starberry wine. She followed the other servants into the grand hall, a cavernous room with a ceiling that mimicked the night sky, complete with twinkling, enchanted stars. She moved like a shadow, pouring wine with downcast eyes. The elders, including the formidable King Frodo with his crown of woven sunlight, were deep in conversation, their voices low and urgent. "The leprechaun raids grow bolder," a general was saying, his face grim. "They're not just stealing gold anymore. They're taking our people. We need the prophecy. We need the supreme fairy." Elena's ears pricked up. The supreme fairy was a legend, a savior foretold to unite the fairy realms against a great darkness. King Frodo turned to a wizened fairy with eyes like milky quartz. "Magdalene, the court witch. Magdalene, your visions have guided us before. Where is this child of prophecy?" The people grow restless. All eyes turned to the witch. Magdalene's gaze, unsettling and ancient, swept around the room. It passed over the king, the generals, and then, for a heartbeat, it rested on Elena. A jolt, like a tiny spark of lightning, passed through Elena. The witch's eyes seemed to see right through her. "The child is among us," Magdalene said, her voice like the rustling of dry leaves. "But she is not yet ready. The bud must not be forced, lest it wither and die." "Who is she?" King Frodo demanded, leaning forward. "We must prepare her. She will make herself known when the time is ripe, and not a moment before," Magdalene replied, her tone final. She looked directly at Elena again, and this time a faint, almost imperceptible nod followed. Then she looked away. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. Among us. Could it mean? Well, it was impossible. She was a slave, a moss blossom. She was nothing. Flustered, she backed away from the table, turning to retreat to the kitchens. In her distracted state, she didn't see the figure entering the hall until it was too late. She collided solidly with a chest of solid muscle, the decanter flying from her hands to shatter on the floor in a pool of purple wine and glittering crystal. A strong hand gripped her arm, steadying her. She looked up into the most striking face she had ever seen. Prince Nala, the king's only son. His hair was the color of fresh-fallen snow, a stark contrast to his sun-kissed skin and eyes the deep blue of a twilight sky. Unlike the usual contempt she saw in the eyes of the sunwings, his held only surprise and a flicker of concern. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice softer than she expected. But before she could stammer an apology, a roar filled the hall. "Unhand my son, you vile creature!" King Frodo was on his feet, his face purple with rage. "I saw you. You threw yourself at him. You think to seduce the prince with your pathetic moss-blossom wiles. Elena shrunk back, but Prince Nala stepped in front of her. "Father, no. It was my fault. I wasn't looking where I was going. I bumped into her." "You defend this slave," the king thundered, his disbelief turning his anger white-hot. "She has clearly bewitched you. First, she distracts the court with her muttering, and now this blatant attempt at manipulation." "It is the truth," Nala insisted, but his father was beyond reason. "Enough. Her punishment is decided." King Frodo's eyes bore into Elena, filled with a hatred that stole the air from her lungs. "Take this scheming moss blossom to the crystal dungeon. No food. No water. Let her reflect on her station until I decree otherwise." Guards seized her arms, their grips like iron. As she was dragged away, her eyes met Prince Nala's. She saw frustration and a hint of shame in his gaze, but he was powerless against his father's decree. The last thing she saw before the heavy dungeon door slammed shut, plunging her into darkness, was the worried face of the witch, Magdalene, watching it all unfold with an unreadable expression. Alone in the cold, silent dark, the king's words echoed in her mind. But beneath the fear, another thought began to grow, fed by the witch's cryptic message and the prince's unexpected kindness. "The child is among us." Elena lay sprawled to a corner in the dungeon. The crystal dungeon was not made of stone, but of a dark, opaque quartz that seemed to swallow all light and sound. It was a silence so profound it felt like a physical weight on Elena's chest. The cold seeped from the walls, a deep chill that her thin slave's tunic could not hope to ward off. Hunger was a sharp, twisting knot in her stomach, and thirst made her throat feel like cracked parchment. To fight the overwhelming despair, she did the only thing she had left: hissing. Her voice, at first a trembling whisper, grew stronger as she poured her heart into the old moss blossom lullaby. "Hush, little blossom, don't you cry, the moon will watch you from on high." As she sang, the dungeon walls melted away. In her mind's eye, she was back in the emerald-canopied glens of her homeland. She saw the bioluminescent fungi glowing softly on the forest floor, the gentle hum of friendly fireflies, and the warm, smiling face of her mother, weaving crowns of clover and moon-petal flowers. Her father was there, his laugh a rich, comforting sound as he taught her the names of the stars seen through the leafy canopy. The memory was so vivid, so peaceful, that the abrupt shift to reality was a physical blow. The war. The sudden brutal attack by King Frodo's Sunwing legions. The sky, once full of friendly fireflies, had been filled with the harsh, blinding light of Sunwing magic. The screams. Her mother shoving her into a hollow log, her last words a desperate whisper. "Be silent, my love. Your fairy godmother will find you. She will guide you." But no one had come. Elena had been found not by a guardian, but by Sunwing soldiers, dragged from her hiding place and into a life of servitude. Tears, hot and bitter, streamed down her face, cutting through the grime on her cheeks. The song died in her throat, replaced by a sob that echoed in the lonely cell. "Fairy godmother," she whispered into the crushing silence, her voice cracking. "Where are you? My mother said you would come. I need help. Please." Only silence answered. A fresh wave of anger, born from years of neglect and pain, surged through her. "Answer me," she cried out, her small fists clenching. "Are you even real? Or was that just another story to give a child hope before she died?" "Some would say hope is the most real thing of all," a quiet voice said from the other side of the crystal bars. Elena gasped, scrambling back against the cold wall. Prince Nala stood there, his white hair seeming to glow in the dim light. He was holding a wooden tray. "I brought you something," he said, his voice low. He slid the tray through a narrow slot at the bottom of the cell door. On it was a hunk of crusty bread, a small bowl of fragrant braised meat, and a steaming cup of what smelled like root vegetable soup. Elena's stomach roared in response, but she recoiled as if the food were poisoned. This was a trick. Had to be. "Take it away," she said, her voice trembling. She wiped her tears away with the back of her hand, trying to salvage some dignity. "Elena, it's not a trap," Nala insisted, his blue eyes earnest. I'm trying to help you. Help me. She let out a bitter, choked laugh. You are the prince of the people who murdered my family and made me a slave. I'm tired of your games. Leave. I stole this from the kitchens, he said, a hint of frustration in his tone. If my father knew. I said leave. Elena shouted, the force of her cry surprising even her. It was the first time she had ever raised her voice to a member of the royal family. Prince Nala flinched. He looked at her, the defiant set of her jaw, the fresh tears welling in her violet eyes, and a complex emotion crossed his face. Shame, conflict, and something akin to respect. He nodded slowly, turned and walked away, his footsteps fading into silence. The moment he was gone, Elena's bravado collapsed. She slid down the wall, burying her face in her knees, her body racked with sobs. The smell of the food was a cruel torture. Why had he come? To toy with her. To give her hope only to have it snatched away. As she wept, lost in her misery, she felt a gentle warm pressure on her shoulder. Hand. Anger flared again. He had returned. He had forced his way in to torment her further. She spun around, ready to scream every ounce of her fury into his face. But it wasn't Prince Nala. A figure made of soft, shimmering light stood before her. It was translucent, but the features were unmistakable. The kind eyes, the gentle smile, the way she held herself. It was her mother. The spirit didn't speak, but her smile was a balm to Elena's shattered soul. She reached out an ethereal hand and gently touched Elena's chest, right over her heart. A wave of warmth, love, and immense power flowed into Elena, silencing her tears and filling the cold dungeon with a sense of profound peace. The spirit pointed a faint, glowing finger towards the cell door, towards the tray of food Prince Nala had left. Then she faded away, leaving behind only a faint scent of moon petals and a heart that, for the first time in years, dared to feel a flicker of something other than fear. Elena looked at the food, then towards the empty corridor where the prince had vanished. The message was clear. The help she had been praying for had not come in the form of a fairy godmother. It had come from the most unlikely place of all. And it was real. The moment her mother's ethereal hand touched her shoulder, Elena's composure shattered completely. She threw herself forward, wrapping her arms around the shimmering form. Instead of passing through, she felt a solid warm presence, a ghostly echo of the hugs she'd cherished as a child. You left me, she sobbed, her voice muffled against the spirit's shoulder. You left me all alone with them. Why? Why did you have to die? The spirit of her mother simply held her, her own silent tears falling like tiny cool drops of starlight onto Elena's hair. She endured her daughter's anguish, letting the years of pain and loneliness pour out. It isn't fair. Elena raged, pulling back to look into her mother's sorrowful eyes. Good people are supposed to be safe. They are supposed to live long, happy lives. Not be cut down for no reason while monsters like King Frodo thrive. The injustice of it all was a fire in her chest. Her mother's voice, when it came, was like a gentle chime in the mind, not a sound in the air. My darling child, the ways of the gods are not the ways of mortals. They see a tapestry where we see only a single thread. My death was a part of a destiny far greater than my own life. Destiny. Elena spat the word. What kind of destiny requires the death of a harmless fairy who never wished anyone ill? I don't understand. You are not meant to understand it all yet, her mother replied, her spirit hand cupping Elena's cheek. You are only meant to trust. I can't. Elena cried, desperation clawing at her. I can't do this alone anymore. Take me with you. Please, mother. I don't want to be here. Her mother leaned forward and pressed a kiss to Elena's forehead. The touch was filled with such an immense, unconditional love that it momentarily stilled Elena's sobs. I cannot, my love. The fairy goddess has need of you here. Elena stared, bewildered. The fairy goddess needs me. A slave. A moss blossom they treat like dirt. Why? What could she possibly need me for? In the eyes of the goddess, a queen and a slave are equals. Both are her children, her mother said, her form beginning to grow faint, more translucent. But what does she need me to do? Elena insisted, a new fear mixing with her confusion. Her mother's image shimmered, evading the question. You will know when the time comes. You are stronger than you know, Elena. Far stronger. No, wait. Don't go. Tell me. Elena begged, reaching out to grab hold of her. I am always with you, the spirit whispered, her voice fading into nothingness. I watch over you from the spirit world. Remember, you are never alone. Elena's hands, which had been clutching at her mother's spirit, closed on empty air. She stumbled forward, a cry of loss tearing from her lips. And then she jolted awake. She was still in the cold, dark crystal dungeon. Her arms were outstretched, grasping at nothing. The ghostly warmth was gone, replaced by the dungeon's familiar chill. A profound loneliness, deeper than any she had felt before, crashed down on her. Had it all been a dream? A cruel trick of her starving, desperate mind? She drew her knees to her chest, the memory of her mother's kiss still a phantom sensation on her forehead. The words echoed in her heart. The fairy goddess has need of you. Felt like a dream. But as her eyes adjusted to the gloom, they fell upon the tray of food Prince Nala had left. The bread, the meat, the soup. It was real. And so was the lingering, impossible feeling that she was, indeed, not alone. The dream, whether a vision or a mirage, had left a seed of defiant hope in the barren soil of her despair. In a distant world, were foreign creatures coveting the fairy land. The scene opens deep within the warren of twisting, root-choked tunnels that served as the leprechaun's stronghold. The air was thick with the smell of damp earth, cheap whiskey, and greedy ambition. Seated on a throne of gnarled, petrified wood and stolen fairy gold was King Circus. He was a grizzled old leprechaun, his beard a tangled mess of red and gray, but his eyes shone with a sharp, malicious intelligence. Before him, a ragtag assembly of his most brutal captains shifted impatiently. The signs are clear as a freshly polished shamrock. Circus's voice rasped, echoing in the cavern. The Sunwing fairies are divided. Their king is a brute who rules by fear, and their so-called prophecy is nothing but a whispered hope. Their strength is an illusion. He slammed a gnarled fist on the arm of his throne. We have tested their borders. We have taken their people. And they have done nothing but hold meetings. Their time is over. The end of the fairies is at hand. Ready the war machines. Sharpen your blades. We will pour out of these tunnels and drown their glittering palaces in a tide of iron and fire. The gold of Glimmerdust Palace will be ours. A savage cheer erupted from the leprechaun army, their eyes gleaming with the promise of plunder. High above, in the sun-drenched spires of the very palace Circus threatened, Prince Nala was pacing the length of his opulent chambers. The meeting with Elena in the dungeon played over and over in his mind. The defiance in her violet eyes. The way she had shouted at him. A prince. No one had ever dared. He should have been furious. Instead he was enthralled. She was a puzzle, a spark of genuine fire in a world of polished, predictable obedience. His thoughts were interrupted as his chamber doors swung open without a knock. Chloe, daughter of Elder Uriel, swept in. Her wings, dusted with gold powder, fluttered with self-importance. She was beautiful in a cold, carved marble way, and she was his betrothed, a political arrangement orchestrated by his father to strengthen ties with a powerful elder family. Nala had never loved her. He barely tolerated her. "Nala, my love," she chirped, her voice like tinkling, empty bells. "I've been looking for you everywhere." Nala didn't stop pacing. "I'm busy, Chloe." She pouted, moving to intercept his path. "You're always busy lately. What is wrong? You can tell me." She placed a perfectly manicured hand on his arm. He shook her off. "I said I'm fine." Chloe's eyes narrowed. She was pompous and often rude, believing her future status gave her the right to be. But she was not a fool. Don't lie to me, Nala. I know you. Is it the council? The leprechaun threats? It's nothing you need to concern yourself with, he said, his tone final. A calculating look entered her eyes. She believed she knew the way to a man's heart, or at least to his distraction. If you are troubled, perhaps I can help you relax, she purred, subtly loosening the delicate silk straps of her gown, letting it slip slightly from her shoulders. The blatant manipulation was the final straw. All the frustration, his father's tyranny, the impending war, his confusing feelings for a slave, and now this empty, arranged farce of a relationship, boiled over. Get out! Nala roared, his voice shaking the crystal ornaments on his table. Chloe recoiled as if struck. The color drained from her face, replaced by a mask of utter shock and hurt. Tears welled in her eyes instantly. How dare you speak to me like that? I am your future queen. I love you. I never asked for your love, he shot back, his chest heaving. Now leave me alone. The tears spilled over, tracing paths through her gold dust. You are cruel, Nala, she whispered, her voice trembling with a genuine pain that, for once, wasn't performative. But I will never stop loving you, even if it destroys me. Without waiting for a response, she turned and fled the room, her sobs echoing down the hallway. The moment she was gone, the anger in Nala collapsed in on itself, leaving a hollow, confused emptiness. He stared at the door, then at his own trembling hands. He grabbed a delicate porcelain vase from a stand, a gift from Chloe's family, and with a guttural cry of frustration, hurled it against the wall. It exploded into 1,000 glittering shards. He stood amidst the wreckage, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The emptiness he felt for Chloe was a vast, cold chamber. But the thought of Elena, alone and defiant in her dark cell, ignited a feeling so warm, so terrifyingly real, it threatened to consume him entirely. And he had no idea what to do about it. In the dungeon, the stale bread and thin soup had become a grim routine when a new presence filled the doorway of Elena's cell. It was not a guard nor Prince Nala. It was the ancient fairy witch, Magdalene. Her milky quartz eyes seemed to see right through the crystal bars, fixed intently on Elena. Elena shuffled back, wary. What do you want? Magdalene didn't blink. The time has come, child. The time to prepare. Prepare for what? Elena asked, confusion warring with a flicker of the hope her mother's vision had planted. Instead of answering, Magdalene raised a gnarled hand. The air in the cell shimmered, the very substance of the world bending and twisting. Elena felt a lurch in her stomach, and the cold dungeon walls dissolved into a breathtaking, star-dusted void. They stood in an astral plane, surrounded by swirling nebulae and twinkling ancient lights. There is no time for questions, Magdalene stated, her voice echoing in the vast silence. She held a simple wooden staff that hadn't been there a moment before. Your training begins now. Training? You're wrong. I'm not who you think I am. I won't do it. Elena protested, backing away on the seemingly solid, starlit ground. You do not have a choice, Magdalene said, and with a speed that defied her age, she swung the staff. It wasn't a deadly blow, but a precise tap against Elena's ankles. A surge of energy, like a jolt of lightning, sent Elena tumbling to the ground, her limbs numb. I will not hold back, the witch said, her expression unyielding. And if you wish to survive what is coming, neither will you. Anger, hot and sharp, burned away Elena's fear. This was just another form of captivity, another force trying to control her. With a cry of frustration, she launched herself at the old fairy, aiming to disarm her. Magdalene easily sidestepped, using Elena's own momentum to send her sprawling again. Anger is fuel, but untamed, it is a fire that burns the wielder. Control it. That first day was a relentless series of falls, jolts, and humiliations. But it was also the first day of her true education. The training continued in secret for months. Each night, in the astral plane, Magdalene pushed Elena to her limits. She taught her not just combat, but to feel the currents of magic that flowed through all things, the energy in the air, the latent power in light, the strength in the earth below. Elena's dull wings began to regain a faint, mossy shimmer. Her body, once frail from hunger and servitude, grew lean and strong. The helpless slave was being forged into a weapon. Finally, King Frodo, perhaps forgetting his own decree or simply not caring, ordered her release from the dungeon to resume her duties. She returned to the palace, but she was not the same fairy who had been dragged away. Months after her release, while carrying a heavy tray of empty goblets from the Great Hall, Elena turned a corner and collided solidly with a familiar broad chest. Prince Nala. He steadied her, his hands on her arms. A jolt, like the ones from Magdalene's staff but far more pleasant, shot through her. His snow-white hair was slightly disheveled, and his twilight blue eyes burned with an intensity that made her breath catch. But instead of the concern she'd seen before, his face twisted into a mask of feigned anger. "You," he snarled, his voice low enough that only she could hear. He grabbed her wrist, his grip firm but not painful, and practically dragged her down the corridor. "What are you doing? Let me go," Elena hissed, but he ignored her. He pulled her into a small, private solar used for reading and slammed the door shut, locking it. He turned on her, his chest heaving. "What did you do to me?" he demanded, his voice a ragged whisper. Elena was utterly bewildered. I did nothing, my prince. I was just—" "Don't," he cut her off, stepping closer. "You must explain it. Why do you invade my thoughts, my dreams? I close my eyes, and all I see are yours." He advanced, and Elena, her heart hammering, retreated until her back was pressed against the cold wood of the door. The tray of goblets clattered forgotten to the floor. "I swear I have no power to do such a thing," she breathed, perspiration beading on her forehead. He was so close she could smell the fresh, clean scent of him, sunlight and crisp air. "There's only one way to be sure," Nala murmured, his gaze dropping to her lips. And then he kissed her. It was not gentle. It was hungry, desperate, and full of all the confusion and longing that had been boiling inside him. For a moment, Elena froze, an internal war raging. This was the enemy. This was forbidden. But the heat of his mouth, the pressure of his body, awoke something fierce and undeniable within her. The carefully constructed walls around her heart crumbled. With a soft, surrendering sigh, she kissed him back, her hands coming up to clutch the fabric of his tunic, pressing her body against his. The kiss deepened, becoming everything. The outside world, the war, their stations. It all melted away. But just as Elena felt herself losing complete control, a sliver of reason returned. She broke the contact, gasping for air, her lips tingling. She couldn't. It was too dangerous. I have to go," she stammered, her voice trembling. She pushed against his chest, and he, stunned by the intensity of the moment, let her go. Elena fumbled with the lock, yanked the door open, and stumbled out into the corridor, straight into the venomous gaze of Chloe. The betrothed princess stood frozen, her face a perfect mask of shock, betrayal, and pure, unadulterated hatred. She had seen everything. Her eyes, glistening with furious tears, bored into Elena, promising a world of pain. Without a word, Chloe turned on her heel and stalked away, leaving Elena standing there, her heart pounding with a terrifying mixture of ecstasy and dread. The astral plane shimmered around them, a canvas of endless twilight. Without a word of warning, Magdalene swung her gnarled staff. A bolt of pure, concussive force erupted from its tip, slamming into Elena's chest and throwing her backwards. She landed hard on the starlit ground, the breath knocked from her lungs. Gasping, Elena struggled to her feet, her body aching. "Why?" she coughed, frustration boiling over. "The other fairies. The Sunwings. They have wands. They focus their magic. Why must I only have your staff beating the magic out of me?" Magdalene stood impassive. "The child of prophecy does not need a wand, girl. A wand is a crutch for those who must ask the world for its power. You You are an embodiment of magic itself. The power is not around you. It is within you. A wand would only limit you. That day the lesson changed. Instead of combat, Magdalene led her to a vision of a vast, ancient forest. Feel it, the priestess commanded. The life in the soil, the breath of the wind, the fire in the sunlight filtering through the leaves. This is the source. Draw from it. Elena tried. She clenched her fists, she concentrated until her head throbbed, but nothing happened. The forest remained a silent, taunting image. Days turned into what felt like weeks in the timeless astral plane. Each session ended the same way, with Elena on the verge of tears, feeling more like a failure than a prophesied savior. One day, after yet another fruitless attempt, Elena sank to her knees. "I can't," she whispered, her voice thick with despair. "It's not there." Magdalene observed her, not with pity, but with a deep knowing. "The magic is there, Elena. It is a deep, boundless well inside you. But you have built a lid of stone over it. A lid made of hate, of grief, of the memory of every slight and every pain." Elena looked up, startled. "You cling to the weight of your suffering," Magdalene continued, her voice softening for the first time. "You think it defines you. Does not. It only imprisons you. To access the well, you must first remove the lid. You must let it go. Let it go." Elena echoed, a flash of anger returning. "Let go of my parents' murder. Let go of years of slavery and hunger." "How?" "Not by forgetting, but by forgiving. Forgiving your enemies not for their sake, but for your own. Forgiving the world for its cruelty. And most importantly, forgiving yourself for surviving when others did not. The weight you carry is not your strength. It is your chain." Magdalene placed a hand on Elena's forehead. "Close your eyes. Feel the anger you hold for King Frodo. Now, imagine it as a black stone in your heart, and let it go. Let it fall away." Felt impossible. The hatred was a part of her. But slowly, tentatively, Elena tried. She envisioned the sharp, heavy stone of her rage against the king. She felt its familiar, bitter comfort. Then, with a monumental effort of will, she imagined releasing it. It was like tearing out a piece of her own soul. Tears streamed down her face as she moved to the next stone, the grief for her parents. Then the humiliation of servitude. One by one, she acknowledged them, and one by one, she let them fall away into a void within herself. As the last stone of self-blame dissolved, a profound emptiness opened up inside her. But it wasn't a cold emptiness. It was a silence, a peace she had never known. And in that silence she felt it. Warmth. Vibration. A power that had been there all along, buried deep beneath the pain. A gasp escaped her lips. Her eyes flew open, but they no longer saw the astral plane. They glowed with a pure, brilliant white light. Energy crackled around her, lifting the strands of her hair. The very air hummed. "Now," Magdalene whispered, a hint of awe in her ancient voice. "Channel it." Elena didn't need to clench her fists or concentrate. She simply raised a hand, palm open. With a sound like a thunderclap, a blast of raw, untamed energy shot from her palm, arcing across the astral plane in a cascade of shimmering power. She had not summoned magic. She had become it. She had entered her magic mode. Days later, Elena was sitting by herself, recapping the events of the past week, when a nervous servant delivered the summons. Her heart immediately sank. The prince wants her. She considered ignoring it, but disobedience in the Sunwing Palace was a luxury she couldn't afford. She arrived at Prince Nala's chamber door, her hands clasped tightly in front of her, her gaze fixed firmly on the floor. "You sent for me, my prince," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "Elena," Nala began, his own voice softer than she expected. "Please look at me." Reluctantly, she lifted her eyes. He looked tired, the usual royal arrogance replaced by a genuine, weary sincerity. I owe you an apology," he said. "For the other day. I was out of line. I was confused and I took it out on you. It was not the act of a gentleman. He took a careful step closer, his hands spread in a placating gesture. I don't want to force anything. I want to know you. As a person. As a friend. The word friend sent a confusing jolt through her. It was what she secretly longed for, a connection in this hostile place. But the memory of Chloe's hate-filled face was a bucket of icy water. We can't, Elena said, her voice barely a whisper. She took a step back towards the door. You know we can't. Because of Chloe. A shadow crossed Nala's face. Chloe is a political arrangement. A demand from my father to secure an alliance with Elder Uriel. I have never loved her. I don't think I even like her. He ran a hand through his white hair, frustrated. My entire life has been a series of duties and expectations. My betrothal was just another one, decided for me when I was still a child. It has nothing to do with my heart. His confession was a dangerous thing to hear. It made him seem real, vulnerable. It made her want to throw caution to the wind. But survival was a deeply ingrained instinct. It doesn't matter what your heart says, my prince, Elena replied, her voice gaining a little strength. Her heart says she loves you, and she has the power to make my life a living hell. I am already a slave. I cannot afford to be a target as well. She turned, her hand reaching for the door handle. I should go. Elena, wait. No, she said firmly, pulling the door open. This is a danger I cannot face. She stepped over the threshold, her decision made. But her feet felt like lead. The pull she felt towards him wasn't just emotional. It was a physical force, a magnetic tug on her very soul. Every instinct screamed that walking away was the wrong choice. She froze. Her hand still on the door, she took a deep, shuddering breath. And then she changed her mind. In one fluid, desperate motion, she let the door swing shut, turned, and crossed the room in 3 quick strides. Before Nala could even process her return, she leaped into his arms, her hands tangling in his hair, and crushed her lips to his. This kiss was different from the first. It wasn't a surprise. It was a surrender. It was hungry, frantic, and full of all the fear and longing she had been suppressing. Nala, after a moment of stunned inertia, responded with equal fervor. His arms wrapping tightly around her, pulling her flush against him. The world narrowed to the feel of his mouth on hers, the solid strength of his body, the taste of him. It was in the heat of this desperate, breathless makeout session, with Nala's hands roaming her back and Elena completely lost in the sensation, that the chamber door swung open. Chloe stood there, her face a mask of perfect horror. She had come to see her betrothed, perhaps to reconcile, only to find him locked in a passionate embrace with a moss-blossom slave. For a long, terrible second, there was only the sound of their ragged breathing. Then a small, wounded sound escaped Chloe's lips. The hatred in her eyes was eclipsed by a heartbreak so profound it seemed to shatter her features. A single tear traced a path through her perfect makeup. Without a word, she turned and fled, her sob echoing down the corridor like a death knell. The spell was broken. Elena and Nala sprang apart, gasping. The warmth of the moment was instantly replaced by a chilling dread. The danger she had feared was no longer a threat on the horizon. It had just seen everything, and it was now running through the palace, wounded and vengeful. Elena was still in cohorts with herself about Chloe happening on her and Prince Nala when Chloe's personal maid summoned her to her chambers. The summons from Chloe felt like a death warrant. Every instinct told Elena to ignore it, to flee. But to refuse a direct command from the king's future daughter-in-law would be an act of suicide in itself. With a heart hammering against her ribs, Elena made her way to Chloe's lavish chambers. The door was ajar. Elena pushed it open slowly and announced herself in a quiet voice. You sent for me, my lady? Chloe stood by the large, arched window, her back to the door, staring out at the glittering spires of the palace. She didn't turn. Elena stayed rooted by the entrance, ready for a swift escape. I was 7 the first time I saw him, Chloe began, her voice distant and strangely calm. At the summer solstice festival. He had that white hair even then. He looked like a prince from a storybook. I decided right then I would marry him. She gave a soft, bitter laugh. It was the easiest decision I ever made. Loving him was as natural as breathing. Elena remained silent, her muscles coiled tight. I always knew, Chloe continued, her tone flattening. I always knew he didn't feel the same. He was always polite, but his eyes, they were always looking somewhere else. At the horizon, his books, anywhere but at me. She finally turned, and her face was not contorted with the rage Elena expected, but was instead a mask of profound, weary sadness. But the way he looked at you today. I've spent my entire life wishing he would look at me like that. Just once. The raw pain in her voice was undeniable. A pang of genuine sympathy shot through Elena's fear. I am sorry, my lady, Elena said, and she meant it. I never meant to come between you. Chloe offered a small, tragic smile. I know. And I've come to realize there is nothing I can do. Cannot force his heart. I cannot compete with a feeling that powerful. She rose from her seat and began to walk slowly towards Elena. Elena fought the urge to step back, her body tensing. To her utter astonishment, Chloe opened her arms and pulled her into a gentle hug. The gesture was so unexpected, so contrary to the venomous hatred of before, that Elena froze in confusion. The hug was stiff, but it seemed sincere. Then Chloe leaned in, her lips brushing Elena's ear. Her whisper was as soft as a serpent's hiss. But if you are gone, my love, he will have no choice but to come back to me. He will see reason. The words registered a fraction of a second too late. Elena felt a sharp, piercing pain in her lower back, a quick, vicious jab. Chloe stepped back, her face serene, as she smoothly tucked a long, ornate hairpin back into her elaborate updo. Elena stumbled, her hand flying to her back. Her fingers came away wet. A strange, cold numbness was already spreading from the wound, moving through her veins like ice. She looked at Chloe, her vision beginning to blur. A foul, metallic taste filled her mouth, and she began to froth, white foam bubbling past her lips. She tried to speak, to cry out, but only a choked gurgle emerged. Her legs gave way, and she collapsed to the floor. The world swam in and out of focus. The last thing she saw was Chloe looking down at her, that same placid smile still etched on her face, before darkness swallowed her whole. Meanwhile, Glimmerdust Palace, usually a serene canvas of pastel hues, was choked with acrid smoke. They were under attack. The leprechaun assault was not one of brute force alone. It was a storm of mischief and dark magic. Their war machines hurled not just boulders, but curses that turned fairy wings to lead and illusions that made allies see each other as monsters. The sunwing lines were crumbling, their brilliant light magic flickering against the oppressive, chaotic darkness. From the highest balcony, King Frodo, his armor dented and his face smeared with soot, roared at the ancient priestess. Magdalene, where is she? Where is your child of prophecy? Our people are dying. Magdalene stood impassive, her milky eyes reflecting the carnage below. She is not ready, your majesty. Not ready, Frodo bellowed, his voice cracking with despair and fury. The kingdom falls and she is not ready. He ripped his sword from its scabbard, its golden glow a defiant spark in the gloom. Then the house of Frodo will fall fighting. I have lost all faith in your whispers and portents. He launched himself from the balcony, a golden comet streaking into the heart of the battle. His roars of challenge lost in the din of dark magic and clashing steel. Elena floated in a place of infinite, gentle gray. There was no pain, no fear, no weight. It was a silent, peaceful oblivion. Before her, a figure coalesced from the mist, radiating a warmth that was both comforting and awe-inspiring. It was the fairy goddess, her form both young and ancient, kind and terrible. Elena. The goddess's voice was like the harmony of 1,000 streams. I'm done, Elena whispered, the words effortless. Let me stay. Let it be over. The living world has given me nothing but pain. The goddess said nothing. Instead, she gestured with a hand, and a pool of silvery water appeared between them. She stirred its surface with a finger. The images that formed made Elena's spirit ache. She saw King Frodo, his golden armor shattered, slumped against a broken wall, barely breathing. She saw Prince Nala, his white hair matted with blood, surrounded by cackling leprechauns, magical chains being clamped around his wrists. She saw the proud Sunwing banners trampled into the mud. The world that gave you pain also gave you him, the goddess said softly. It gave you strength you never knew you possessed. Gave you a purpose. Will you let it end like this? Will you let him be taken, or worse? Elena watched as Nala struggled against his bonds. His head held high even in defeat. The memory of his kiss, the feel of his arms around her, the vulnerability in his eyes when he spoke of his duty, it all surged back, a tidal wave of feeling in this place of nothingness. The peace of oblivion was a lie. It was a surrender. And she realized, with a jolt, that she was not done fighting. No, Elena said, her voice firming, filling with a newfound resolve. I choose to go back. The fairy goddess smiled, an expression that held the joy of a billion blooming flowers. Then go, my child. The world awaits its protector. She reached out, touching Elena simultaneously on the forehead, igniting her mind with ancient knowledge, and on the heart, filling it with a boundless divine love. The sensation was overwhelming, a power so vast and pure it felt like being born and dying all at once. Elena sneezed. Back in Chloe's chambers, the moss-blossom slave's body, lying in a pool of its own making, jolted. A gasp ripped through Elena's lungs, and her eyes flew open, blazing with white celestial light. The poison in her veins evaporated like morning dew under a harsh sun. The wound on her back sealed itself, leaving only smooth skin. She rose not like a person but like a force of nature. She strode from the room, her steps not touching the floor. Out in the main battle, the leprechauns were herding captives, their king, Circus, laughing atop a pile of rubble. The very air changed. A hush fell, broken only by a low hum that seemed to emanate from Elena herself. She raised a hand, and a wave of pure, undiluted life energy erupted from her, washing over the battlefield. The leprechauns' dark magic unraveled like rotten thread. Their illusions shattered. The leaden heaviness vanished from the fairies' wings. King Circus's laughter died in his throat. What is this? Another trick. Elena's eyes found him. She didn't speak. She simply pointed. A lance of condensed sunlight, far purer and more potent than any sunwing could conjure, shot forth. It struck Circus's war machine, vaporizing it. She moved through the battlefield, a whirlwind of righteous fury. She didn't just fight, she restored. Wounds closed, strength returned to the weary, and hope rekindled in desperate hearts. She saw Nala, staring at her in stunned disbelief from within his magical cage. With a glance, the chains around him turned to dust. The leprechaun army, their dark magic useless and their king scrambling in panic, broke and fled back to their tunnels. The victory was absolute, but not without cost. As the last of the enemy fled, the divine light around Elena flickered. The immense power the goddess had channeled through her had taken its toll. She stumbled, a trail of shimmering ethereal blood, the price of wielding such power, leaking from a gash on her arm she hadn't even felt. She collapsed to one knee, the brilliant light in her eyes dimming to a soft glow, the weight of her mortal body and its injuries returning all at once. She had saved her people, but she was wounded, exhausted and more human, more fairy than god. The battle was over, but her journey had just begun. Witnessing the devastating blow to their side, the final leprechaun scurried back into its tunnel, and an eerie silence fell over the battlefield, broken only by the soft moans of the wounded and the crackle of dying magical fires. Then a single fairy, her wings still trembling, pointed a shaky finger at Elena. "It's her," she whispered. "The prophecy." The whisper became a murmur, then a roar. The surviving fairies, both Sunwing and the few freed Moss Blossom slaves, converged on Elena. They did not just look at her. They gazed with awe, with reverence. They began to kneel, their heads bowed not to a king, but to the living embodiment of their salvation. "No, please," Elena said, her voice hoarse as she clutched her injured arm. The divine light had faded, leaving her feeling exposed and deeply embarrassed. "Please don't. Not just me. Get up, please." But they continued to press in, their worship a new kind of prison. Just as panic began to set in, the crowd parted. Nala, his face a mixture of wonder, relief, and unwavering love, pushed his way through. He didn't bow. He didn't kneel. He walked straight up to her, cupped her face in his hands, and kissed her. It was not a kiss of stolen passion, but one of profound claim and public declaration. A cheer erupted from the crowd, a wave of joyous sound that washed away the last remnants of fear and division. The fairies celebrated not just their victory, but their new, united hope. The noise died down as suddenly as it had begun. Hush fell. Nala and Elena, their foreheads still touching, turned. King Frodo stood behind them, leaning heavily on his butler. His armor was ruined, his body battered, but his eyes, for the first time, held no anger, only a weary, hard-won wisdom. He looked at the couple, at his people surrounding them, and he understood everything. Nala, still holding Elena's hand, stepped forward. "Father," he said, his voice clear and firm, carrying across the silent field. "I love her. If you cannot accept her, then I will leave this kingdom. But I will not leave her." King Frodo looked from his son's determined face to Elena's nervous but resolute one. A faint, pained smile touched his lips. "And who, my son?" he asked, his voice raspy but loud enough for all to hear. "Would you leave the position of king and queen for, if you leave with the people's queen?" The meaning was unmistakable. A wave of elation swept through Nala and Elena. The king was not just accepting them. He was endorsing them. "Your union," Frodo continued, his voice gaining strength, "has saved this kingdom. Let it now lead it. Bless you. May your reign be long, and your line be fruitful." As the crowd erupted into cheers once more, a figure emerged from the periphery. Chloe, her face pale and streaked with tears, approached slowly. She stopped before Elena, her head bowed. Before Elena could speak, Chloe fell to her knees. I tried to take a life that was meant to save us all," Chloe whispered, her voice thick with shame. "I was blind with jealousy. Can you ever forgive me?" Elena looked down at the girl who had been her enemy, seeing not a tormentor, but another soul broken by the rigid expectations of their world. She reached out, placing a hand on Chloe's shoulder. "There is nothing to forgive," Elena said softly. "The past is gone. We move forward together." She helped Chloe to her feet, and in that simple act, a new friendship was born. Weeks later, the Glimmerdust Palace shone brighter than it ever had. The entire kingdom gathered, not for war, but for a coronation and a wedding. Under a canopy of woven sunlight and moss blossoms, Nala and Elena were crowned king and queen. Their joined hands were a symbol of a new era, where Sunwing and Moss Blossom were no longer divided. And as they shared their first kiss as rulers, the kingdom knew that the prophecy had not just been about power, but about love. And in that love, they found their true and lasting, happily ever after.